Welcome to Punchline Talks, the big interview sponsored by Infostar IT Solutions. Today, my special guest is Lynette Barrett. She's the CEO of Gloucestershire-based charity National Star. Hello, Lynette.
Hello, nice to see
Nice
you.
to see you. Thank you very much. Anyway, let's start at the very beginning. Let's start about National Star. People think they know it, but they don't know it. Let's start with the numbers first. How many people work there? What's the turnover, staff, pupils?
Okay, so we're a charity for working age and young adults with physical disabilities and acquired brain injuries and learning disabilities. Next year, we're forecasted to turn over around £46 million. We've got around about 1,250 employees based over several locations in Gloucestershire here. And then actually we've also got locations in Herefordshire, Wales and Worcestershire as well. And we deliver services to around about 300 young people and adults a year, varies whether that be education, care or therapy services. So fairly significant charity, and probably one of the larger disability charities in the UK.
And you've been there quite a while, haven't you? How long have you been there and you've held different positions?
I've held many different positions over the years. So I've been there, I've been at National Star now nearly 24 years. So when I started working at National Star, I was a young mother looking for part-time work. I've got two children, and was looking for a carer's role. And so I came into National Star as a very part-time care worker. But more latterly, obviously, my career as CEO. So I have been CEO at National Star now for 2 years, which I'm incredibly privileged to hold that responsibility. And prior to that, I was Chief Operations Officer for about 5.5, 6 years prior to that. And then between me starting in January 2001 and then I did various roles, mainly working at the levels of management through our residential services. So my background is social care. But I've done lots of qualifications along the way, and the organisation has supported me in many different ways over the years to make sure that I could further my career, and we continue to do that for colleagues across the whole charity now in terms of developing and retaining staff. That's one of our sort of core values.
I wouldn't say it's been the biggest change over the last 20 years. I know it's grown, isn't it?
Massively. So when I started over those years, there were less than 200 employees. And we were only located in Gloucestershire, and we only delivered education term time only. So we're now a 52-year-round provision. We deliver, yes, predominantly education services, but we also deliver respite services, private therapeutic services, long-term accommodation, so accommodation and care for life for people with complex needs. And as I say, we've expanded into those other locations in other parts of the country and have ambition to do more of that. But I think probably the main thing that has changed, if you come to National Star 15, 20 years ago at Ullenwood in Cheltenham and then came now, I mean, visually, there's no comparison. It looks like a completely different place in terms of new buildings that have been developed through our sort of charity fundraising, etc. We've been able to be able to make sure that we've got absolutely the best facilities and environments for the young people we work with. So environmentally, there's massive changes, but also the young people that we work with are quite different now. So when I started at National Star 20 years ago, many of our students have plans to go on to higher education, university. Most have paid employment outcomes. But the young people that get referred to National Star and other specialist colleges similar to National Star are far more complex now. Those young people that are going on generally to higher education or into paid employment will often be educated through mainstream further education. So now we tend to see much more complex people with very sort of multiple physical and sensory disabilities. And so the employees at National Star, we've had to make sure that we have invested in their development so that they have got the skill set to work with the complexities that the young people here present with, and also making sure that we're looking to gain expertise from outside of the organisation and recruit into so that we're in a really strong position to make sure that we're equipped to actually provide for the young people that are referred through to National Plan. We have a really diverse student group, which is lovely. We still have students that are going into paid outcomes, absolutely paid work outcomes, but we also have some young people that are coming to develop a meaningful communication that, you know, just being able to communicate yes and no gives them a level of empowerment that they've never experienced before, and a whole host of students in between across day and residential provision. So it's really varied.
Now that specialist needs, I mean, that must be extremely expensive to provide that, you know, that kind of level of service.
Yeah, absolutely. Our biggest cost is our colleagues, so the colleagues across the organisation, so staff, but they're also our greatest asset. And they change the lives of the young people that we work with. So you know, that is always something that is going to cost a significant amount of money. And what we do as a charity is just constantly look to how we offer the best quality, but at the best value as well. You know, it's a difficult environment out there financially, isn't it? The country is in not the best place. Our student placements are funded by local authorities, social care, education, health, etc. So some of those critical, you know, departments that are really struggling at the moment. And we're constantly looking at how we can give them value for money. But ultimately, the young people that we're supporting are some of the most vulnerable in our country. And most of the young adults that we support have been known to their local authorities and in children's services throughout their lives. Most of them have been born with a disability. Some have had acquired brain injuries, but most have been born with their disability. If you look at how we invest in special care baby units now and ITU healthcare, when there is a traumatic event for a birth or a baby or a child, we need to look at how we continue as a public sector that funding for those young people through to adulthood, because how we sustain life now is absolutely superb and magnificent, but often those young people are going to need level of care through into adulthood, and that needs to be recognised alongside those fantastic, as I say, special care and ITU services that we have.
So how much money do you tend to raise from, you know, charity rattling the tin, and how much money do you need?
So our charitable fundraising is quite different. So our student placements, which generally our employees are our biggest cost for student placements, they are funded through public monies through local authorities. Our charitable fundraising pays for the buildings, the equipment, and everything that you see around National Star when you come into one of our locations. So, you know, and actually year on year, what we need to raise is different. It depends what campaigns and projects we've got on. So if we look back at September 2023, for 18-month period running up to that, we were running a Build a Brighter Future campaign. Phase 1 of that, we're about to look at how we launch phase 2 of that campaign now. And that initial campaign was around about a £6 million project to build a 12-bedroomed, fully ensuite, fully accessible building, a student accommodation, and also an assessment and technology suite as well. So we did all of the fundraising for that, and that opened on time and on budget in September 2023. And we were able to raise the funds that we needed. And I think at that time, I think the actual funds that we needed to raise specifically for that project were around about 4 million of the 6. And we managed to raise all of that. So through major donors, trust and foundations, as well as those general fundraising events that, you know, we think, and all the great people out there that do individual work for us, sponsored walks, runs, marathons, skydives, and all of those things as well. You know, somebody might raise £50 for us, or they might raise £1,000 for us. It all contributes and it all helps.
It must be so difficult trying to balance all the different elements and different needs all the time. You know, as you said, the complexities of the individual child, and then growing up to adulthood. I mean, how the hell do you have a team of managers that work on that sort of side of things? How does it work?
We have a real multidisciplinary approach to all the work that we do. It is really complex, the work that we do. It's a fantastic place to work. We're privileged to be here, but it really is very complex. So we've got specialists and managers and leaders across the organisation that have to work collaboratively to be able to make sure that that individual person gets the best possible experience. So it's making sure that we recognise all the different disciplines, you know, different therapeutic areas, care services, education, curriculum, and all that side of things. But and you'll not have different people that have different responsibility across that. They have to work collaboratively, because without that joined up working, things just, the jigsaw puzzle doesn't fit nicely together, let's say, and you end up having pieces in the wrong order. So, you know, there's a huge amount of time that goes into that communication, collaboration, and making sure that we're all working on the behalf of the young person with the same aim. We've all got the same aim.
Let's just talk about that. I'm glad you said about the leadership and management, because that's what I was going to get to next, actually, is how do you manage the team itself? Do you have regular daily teams, you know, regular monthly meetings? How do you manage it? How do you manage it being the chief exec?
Okay, so I've got a leadership team, and then I've got, there's levels of manager. We've got national leads and heads of department below that. So in terms of the leadership team, my expectation is, as part of the leadership team, they are here to lead the charity, and to do so, you know, taking their responsibilities forward. So trying to allow people to do their jobs and get on with their work without interfering with them too much, which I find really difficult. That's probably my guilty thing, is making sure I leave people alone to get on with their work. I have to say I'm probably getting better at that the longer I'm in the post of CEO, but it is something to get used to after being COO, because it's quite different in that sense. But also making sure that I am staying absolutely in touch with everything that is happening across the charity. That's really important to me. And I know that lots of CEOs work in lots of different ways, but for me, to be able to lead this charity in the best possible way forward, I need to understand the young people that are with us. I need to understand their wider families, their wider stakeholders, and I need to understand what's happening across the whole workforce of National Star, for me to make sure that I'm in a position to be able to lead and support the rest of the leadership team to make the right decisions for the future. You know, as a charity, we've been around nearly 60 years now. It's my responsibility that when I step down from this role in however many years in the future, that it's here for another 60 years. And I leave it in a position to be, you know, in really good hands. So for me, I think it's staying in regular contact through various meeting structures, etc., which most businesses and charities will be familiar with, but also giving people the autonomy and empowerment to be able to lead within their own rights.
You say your biggest achievement was there at National Star?
So I think in terms of as a charity, as a whole charity, the biggest achievement of the charity really has been to sustain high quality through probably one of the most turbulent decades ever. And that's not just down to me, that's down to every person that has worked across National Star and all the young people that have attended it and their families. We've had some of the most difficult financial times. We've had economic crisis, we've had the pandemic. We remained open and functioning throughout the pandemic with some incredibly vulnerable young people with us, and some very vulnerable employees as well. So often delivering services with a very sort of a marginal workforce because of all of the isolation and all of those sorts of things. That was a really difficult 2 years. So the fact that we've come through that, we're now in 2024, the charity is in a really good position in terms of the quality we're delivering in education, care and therapy services. And we're also in a good position financially. We're managing to keep the books balanced and keep the charity healthy in that sense. So for me, I think that is absolutely the biggest achievement for the charity.
So I'm going to ask you you say your biggest mistake was that you since you've been CEO?
My biggest mistake now, gosh, I mean, I need to write a list, don't I? I mean, what I would say is I don't think I'm really relieved to be able to sit here and say I don't think I've made a catastrophic mistake. Um, but I actually think probably my biggest mistake was underestimating the difference between being the chief executive and the chief operations officer. I didn't think that it would feel that different, and it is significantly different. So I think probably a big mistake was underestimating that and underestimating how long it would actually take me to be able to adjust my approach and my leadership to being the chief executive of National Star rather than the chief operations officer of National Star.
Well, yeah, I could exactly see where you're coming from there. I'm going to ask you, so you've been 22 years, but are you from Gloucestershire originally?
No, I was born in Wolverhampton. I grew up in Kidderminster. I've got two sisters and a brother, and grew up with my parents in Kidderminster until I was about 10. And then my parents bought a business in Gloucestershire. And so we moved to Gloucestershire, yeah, in 1985.
What
And
was
I've
the
been in
business?
Gloucestershire ever since. So they actually bought a boarding kennels in Elmore in Gloucestershire. Um, and yeah, so they were there for probably 7 or 8 years. And then sadly, my father became unwell. And so they sold the business. And I lost my dad now well over 20 years ago. So relatively young when he passed away. But yeah, I think that brought me to Gloucestershire. Both my sisters actually and my brother don't live locally anymore. So sisters went back to Kidderminster area, brothers in Cornwall. But I've remained in Gloucestershire because I have a lot of roots and connections. I was the youngest of the four of us, by quite a significant amount. And I think my roots were developed here, whereas my siblings' roots were developed elsewhere and came to Gloucestershire quite late into their teens, etc. So, but Gloucestershire's home to me.
Now, you've kindly shared a photograph with me, which I'm going to share here. This one here. So, how old are you?
So
How old are you here, Lynette?
that was literally just as we moved to Gloucestershire. So that was 1985. And we went for a day trip as a family, and we'd gone to basically a Wild Western theme park. And my absolute love then and still is, and my passion is horses. So as soon as I found a model horse, I hopped on it and started to eat my feast ice cream. So two best things: ice cream on a horse. What more could a kid want?
I thought it was a real horse, actually, to be fair to you.
It's not. There are plenty of pictures of me on real horses, but that one is not real.
It's fun. I'm glad you mentioned that because I was going to ask you about your hobbies. Is that one of your main hobbies then, horse riding?
Yeah, so I rode as a child, and I rode right up until I was pregnant with my eldest son, who's 27 now. So I rode right up until I was pregnant with him, and I had my own horses, and invented at an amateur level, but nonetheless, it was great fun and loved it. And then I sold the horses when I was pregnant with Ryan, with the intention that I would go back to it one day when I'd raised a family and I'd worked out how I can juggle working with raising children, marriage, house, etc. Oh, and fit horses in on top. And it never quite happened until 2018. I think I've sat on a horse between 1996 and 2018 twice in that time. But my passion for horses had never gone away. And then in 2018, I thought, you know what, I'm 43 now. I was 43 then. And my mum was terminally ill, so she was very poorly. And I thought, if I don't go back to it now, I never will. And I lost my mum sadly in the summer of 2018, and I bought a horse in the August. And that horse actually was not only sort of something that I'd yearned to do for many years. It was absolutely fantastic bereavement therapy because it was escapism, a calmness that I'd get, and it filled a level of my time that was sort of a void because I was very busy with work, but very quickly within a 12-month period, I went from having two kids at home and a mum that was quite disabled and needing a lot of support and a very busy job, to both of my boys being at university. Well, the youngest being at university, the eldest had just left and was going away to live in London, and losing my mum. So there was suddenly, I had time on my hands and needed something to fill it. And so horses have done that. And I've got two now. So most mad equestrian people will tell you, that you tend to collect them. And my husband did have a conversation about having a third, and he just gave me a look. Didn't really need to say anything more than he just looked at me.
I mean, horses are just amazing on the therapeutic side. I used to help stepping stones and steps and things like that, and horse psychotherapy.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, they're amazing creatures that do so much good. They are gentle, sensitive souls. And yes, horses can be dangerous in lots of different ways in terms of riding, and people can have accidents. But basically, a horse is a very gentle and kind soul that, with the right people around it, will be incredibly in tune with what the person needs that's in front of them, which makes them brilliant for children and young adults that have got extra needs and sensory needs. Horses can provide that beautifully.
That's our youngest daughter would agree. Actually, she's been bitten by two different horses. So, but mind you, they were wild ponies in Lundy Island. So
Probably best not to go up to them.
no, not at all. Anyway, we're kind of running out of time already, would you believe? So I'm going to ask you for your what are you reading at the moment? Have you got a favourite book or anything?
Oh, well, at the moment, so I'm not reading anything businessy at the moment, unfortunately. What I'm actually reading is a Warwickshire training manual for young horses, because I've got a 16-month-old horse that I need to understand every aspect of raising a yearling. So that's what I've been reading in my spare time most recently.
Okay. Then what's your top three business tips, please?
So I think, you could have 50, but I think one of the most important things is remembering the people around you will always be your greatest asset, and to make sure that you value them. Absolutely. I think that would be one. Another, I think, is making sure that you understand your own work-life balance and don't have that dictated to you. I think there's a lot out there. There's a lot of theory, lots of books, lots of leadership books that talk about work-life balance and the importance of it and what it should look like. I think what's really important to be a well-rounded, balanced, successful leader is that you know what works for you. And as long as it works for you, it doesn't matter if it sits in the text of a book somewhere. Some people can't access, shouldn't access things when they're not in the office, etc., like emails, etc. Others have to be able to balance what they do when they come. Whatever works for you, you do that. And then I think my third would be, as a business leader, is never lose sight of your vision and the purpose behind your business or charity, whatever it might be. So understanding your core purpose and what your vision is, and don't get distracted from that. It's really easy to see something shiny over there and be distracted and go, oh, what's that? And actually come back and remember, what is our core purpose and what is our vision, and what are we trying to deliver here?
And Barrett, unfortunately, that's all we've got time for today. I'd just like to thank you ever so much for joining us, Punchline Talks, the big interview today. I'd like to thank our sponsors, Infostar IT Solutions. And remember, it's all in the punchline. Thank you. Bye.